Alrighty, so this is going to be the 0500 IGCSE code paper 1, question number 240, which is the meaning and effect question. Also probably one of the most interesting questions in this paper, and there's a lot of creative freedom in it too. So we're quickly going to take a look at the format and where this question is in the format, and then we will move towards solving the question, right? So paper 1 is a reading paper, which implies that there is a lot of reading involved, there's a lot of analysis involved, and then obviously writing as well. It's a written paper, which means you have to write it. It's for 2 hours and it's for 18 marks. You guys will be given 3 texts, and all of the questions are compulsory. You have to do all of them. Answers must be given at the space provided on the question paper. Text A and text B will be 700 to 750 words in length, and text C will be 500 to 650 words in length. The question that we are answering today, that is a question, comes entirely from text C. So question 1 is a comprehension and summary task. Question 2 is a short answer questions and language task. So the meaning and effect question is actually called the language task. I like to call it the meaning and effect question, and that is for a total of 25 marks. But the language task solely, or the meaning and effect question solely, is for 15 marks. So let's take a look at what the question demands, right? So this question requires candidates to respond to text C. Candidates write about 200 to 300 words. This question tests the following reading assessment objectives for 15 marks. That is, demonstrate understanding of explicit meaning, demonstrate understanding of implicit meanings and attitudes, demonstrate understanding of how writers achieve effect and influence readers. And there's question 3, which is an extended response to reading for 25 marks. And that is the format. So now let's take a look at the question that we will be solving today. So this is the meaning and effect question, or the language task, right? It's question number 2, part D. Reread paragraphs 8 and 11. Paragraph 8 begins, in theory lessons, and is about writing on the snow and ice. Paragraph 11 begins, the most memorable ... and it's about the writer's feelings that night. Explain how the writer uses language to convey meaning and to create effect in these paragraphs. Choose 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. Your choices should include the use of imagery. Write about 200 to 300 words. Up to 15 marks are available for the content of your answer. So before we go to the text that we will read before answering the question, let's just take a look at the question again and how to, break it down. So you guys will obviously read the entire text to get a general idea of what the text is about. And then you will, really be zooming in on these 2 paragraphs, right? So you will read paragraph 8 again, you will read paragraph 11 again, and you will be finding 3 phrases from both of these paragraphs. So 3 from paragraph 8, let me annotate this as well. So 3 from here, and 3 phrases from here, right? Words or phrases that convey meaning, that is explicit meaning, some sort of obvious meaning, and create effect. Effect is implicit meaning, right? So what kind of atmosphere is created when that phrase is used? What kind of ideas convey to the reader when that word is, or when that phrase is used, right? Choose 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. And then they've given us a third condition. The first condition is that it needs to have some kind of explicit meaning, some kind of obvious meaning. Anybody who reads the sentence, what they gauge from it, that is the explicit. And to create effect. So effect is again implicit meaning, what the reader receives without the writer explicitly saying it, right? So let's say the writer uses a phrase to describe the northern lights, which are in the extract, by the way. And the use of that phrase elicits a kind of magical, wondrous feeling inside of the reader. So that is implicit meaning, right? And then your choices should also include the use of imagery. So this is this is explicit meaning, implicit meaning. And the third condition is that they need to have imagery as well. Let me just type that. So the conditions are additions for the phrases that you put, obviously. And not only do they need to have explicit meaning, uh, and they use it imagery, you also need to know explicit meaning, that's how the imagery is, because that's what they want to know. That do you know the do you know the you know how imagery, right? So each phrase needs to fulfill all these three conditions for you to be able to write it in your question. Okay, now I'm just going to erase all this. So 6 phrases total, write about 200 to 300 words. So 200 I feel like is too less for a question like this. You can write a minimum of 250 and then you can go up to 300, right? And up to 15 marks are available for the content of your answer. Now let's just go towards the insert. Okay. Let's see writing the rails, learning how to drive a dog's sled. In this article, journalist Lynn Marshall looks back at her adventure holiday in Alaska. As the sky gradually turned indigo in the fading light, scraping of ice and frantic, unheeded commands to my sled dog team broke the stillness. Thundering down the frozen waterway, I snatched anxious glimpses over my shoulder. Where was Mike, my guide? Would his tracker still pick up my signal with the gap between us increasing by the minute? Out exploring that Friday evening, an irresistible scent had wafted by my lead dog's keen nose. Following primal instincts over my feeble instructions, he'd wheeled around, leading his obliging pack in the opposite direction at full speed. Applying all my weight to the hook brake saved me from fishtailing wildly from side to side, but did nothing to slow the dog's enthusiastic charge. So, one thing I suggest that students do when they're reading an insert for the first time, right, is that make very short, maybe 2 word, maybe 3 word, maybe short sentence notes with each paragraph. Because what happens sometimes during an exam, and I can say this from experience, is that you can read something without understanding it, right? So you are reading every word, but you're not comprehending it, right? So just take a pause, maybe after every one paragraph, every 2 paragraphs, and just think about what you just read. So let's say for this a particular paragraph, what is going on, right? So clearly, this person, the journalist and Marshall, she's on a dog's side, right? And she is shouting to her dog team, to the dogs, to stay on the path, basically, right? But they are going elsewhere, and she is very anxious. She's looking for her tour guide to come and basically ask the dogs to behave themselves, right? And she's trying to use the tracker, which is not as of yet picking up the signal with the tour guide, right? So she's kind of just off the path, and the dogs are taking her elsewhere because they've caught a scent, right? They've caught some sort of irresistible scent, and now they're trying to follow the scent and see where it's coming from, basically, right? So that's what's going on so far. So let's see what's next. And a really good beginning, anyways, right? It sparks your interest that is this woman going to be safe? What is going to happen next, etc. And we're introduced to 2 people as of yet: the journalist Lynn Marshall, so the person on the dog sled, and the tour guide, that is Mike, right? From my evening chats with Mike over the last few days, I knew that if we lost each other entirely, I was in trouble. I had nothing, no extra clothing, no shelter, but more importantly, nothing to start a fire. We'd seen wolf tracks regularly, so fire seemed particularly important to me at that moment. Right? So for a second, she's taken us back in time when they were getting this sort of training, when they were speaking, when she was speaking to the tour guide, right? That what do I do in a situation like this? And she knew now that if she gets lost, she's going to be in trouble. Because if she gets lost, Mike, the tour guide, is not going to be able to find her, right? And she has nothing. She does not have extra clothing. She does not have shelter. She doesn't have anything to start a fire. And there are wolves around because they've seen wolf tracks, right? So fire seemed particularly important to her at that moment because fire is going to keep the wolves at bay. Okay, so here they kind of take a pause. It's a journal entry, so she's probably going to a different moment in time now. It was March, the tail end of the long, cold winter. Roads are closed, rivers were frozen, and access into the region was limited. Still spellbound from gazing at the enormity of the Alaskan wilderness, I stepped down from the mail plane into the miniature perfection of Eagle, a fascinating history-packed hamlet of timber dwellings, home to just 85 residents. So this is where she's staying for this expedition that she's on at Eagle, right? Which is a dwelling that is home to just 85 residents. I was immediately wrapped in the customary bear hug by Mike's wife, Scarlett, and cocooned in layers of Arctic grade outerwear. Right? She kind of took a pause from explaining what happened that day, and now she's taken us back to the day when she first arrived here, right? Mike and Scarlett, so Mike again is the tour guide, Scarlett is the wife, live sustainably, hunting, fishing, and gathering, consciously leaving a minimal carbon footprint. The carbon footprint is the amount of carbon dioxide that human activities take, right? So because Mike and Scarlett are living sustainably, they're leaving behind a minimal carbon footprint. They've enjoyed many years of wilderness expeditions using traditional dog sleds and now provide opportunities for adventurous souls to experience their eco lifestyle firsthand. Driving a dog sled is harder than it looks. As Mike's passenger, I realized it involved constant corrective maneuvers, anticipating the dog team's next move. They only ever do what they want to, and possibly camber, which means to tilt in the trail, right? So before actually going off on her own, Lynn was actually given a sort of drive by Mike, the tour guide, where she realized that it's actually not very easy to maneuver or drive a dog sled, right? In theory lessons, Mike's diagrams emphasize the ice highway can be anything from porcelain smooth to oversized ice cubes. Slam into one of those, and you'd need your emergency messaging device. But winding through spruce forest, tracing soft, snow-covered lines is a precious delight. Crisscrossing a small lake's glassy surface, I looked down to see exquisite designs, crystal bubbles of all shapes and sizes, suspended in time, cascading into the dark depths. So again, she takes us into another moment of time when Mike was giving them theory lessons. Theory lessons before these tourists go on their own to drive the dog sleds, right? So he's explaining that the ice path on which they're going to be driving the dog sleds, they can either be really smooth or they can be oversized ice cubes, which is obviously problematic. So he was preparing them for the best and the worst case scenario, right? So he's giving them a tutorial, if you will. And then she kind of explains that as she was crisscrossing, when she was on the dog sled across a small lake's grassy surface, she could see the exquisite designs of the ice, right? Of all shapes and sizes, suspended in time, cascading into the dark depths. There were, of course, many thrills and spills. Losing control on one adrenaline charged downhill run, I tipped sideways onto the snow. So this is another kind of adventure that she went on. She kind of lost control when she was running downhill. She tipped sideways onto the snow. My happy yappy team continued on, their inept operator hanging on single-handedly, thankful for the padded trousers provided. Each evening we settled in at a different location, often an old miner's cab, where our teams were secured and cared for. The teams are your lifeline, your escape route, so their health and well-being are paramount. Only after this did we collect snow for our water and cut firewood. So here by teams, they mean the dogs who were driving the sleds, right? So their well-being is obviously very important as well because they are the ones driving. They're the ones, they're the vehicles for them. They're the transport system for them. The most memorable night, using only nature's materials, we shoveled and hacked, creating a shelter against the sub-zero temperature. A reflective wall of logs threw the pit fire's heat under our makeshift roof. As Mike spoke with passion about life out here, the joy of relative freedom, and the aurora borealis, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, but this is northern lights. I'm sure everyone's familiar with northern lights. It's kind of like a spectacle in the northern areas where it's like these colorful lights, often green and red. And it's a natural spectacle. In the night skies, our nature's artwork, a ceiling of stars on dark nights, or flooded with rippling emerald green curtains. The really poignant visual image. As I burrowed down for the night, fire crackling in the stillness, the howling of wolves drifted to us. It was a moment of complete and utter contentment, right? So that is your insert. Now you can see why I kind of told you guys to take small notes of what goes on in the paragraph, because there's so much going on in this single uh, passage, right? This is just one text, but there were so many different things going on in it. It's a really good idea to just make the text more digestible, to break it down like that. Go paragraph wise and just make little notes of what goes on in each. It makes it easier to follow. Okay, so now coming back to our question, right? So again, we have to pick out phrases from paragraph 8 and paragraph 11 that meet three conditions: have explicit meaning, have implicit meaning, and have some sort of imagery as well, right? And then we have to explain how the writer uses language to convey meaning and to create effect in these paragraphs. Three examples of words or phrases from each paragraph. So I've already written the response, so I'll share that with you guys. All right, so again, I have copied the question here on a separate document, so it's just easier to understand and break it down. So the phrases that I picked out, again, we'll go to paragraph 8 and I will show you guys the phrases that I picked out. By the way, really good idea to find the paragraph by using the beginning words that they've given you. We don't want you counting wrong, picking the wrong paragraph, picking out the words from there, and losing half your marks, right? So in theory lessons, it is right here, right? So you will read this paragraph and you will find again three words or phrases that meet those three conditions. You should know the explicit meaning of it, implicit meaning of it, and it should have some sort of visual image or some use of imagery, right? In theory lessons, Mike's diagrams emphasize that the ice highway can be anything from porcelain smooth. So one of the phrases I picked out was porcelain smooth, to oversized ice cubes. Again, obviously a very visual image. Porcelain smooth, also an image. Slam into one of those and you'd need your emergency messaging device. But winding through spruce forest, tracing soft, snow-covered lines is a precious delight. Crisscrossing a small lake's glossy surface, I looked down to see exquisite designs, crystal bubbles of all shapes and sizes suspended in time. So this was the third phrase that I picked. Crystal bubbles of all shapes and sizes suspended in time. Clearly means all conditions has an explicit meaning. The literal meaning, which is that this is used to describe the ice, right? Crystal bubbles of all shapes and sizes. The implicit meaning, the kind of effect this creates. And the third one was image. So obviously crystal bubble, very clear image, right? Cascading into the dark. Okay, so we're done with picking out the phrases for paragraph 8. Now moving on to paragraph 11. It begins with the most memorable. This was the last paragraph, the second last paragraph. Oh, I think I did not read this bit. Exactly how far I traveled through the twilight with my errand team, I'll never know. Our detour didn't have a dramatic end in the fangs of a wolf pack. Only when fatigued did the team slow, gliding to a halt with Mike rounding the bend sometime later to locate. So the story that they started with the dogs going out of control, they've now brought it full circle. And here, the tour guide Mike, he came and he saved the journalist Len, who was driving the dog sled that was going out of control. Okay, from here, the most memorable night, using only nature's materials, we shoveled and hacked, creating a shelter against the sub-zero temperature. A reflective wall of logs through the pit fire's heat under a makeshift roof. As Mike spoke with passion about life out here, the joy of relative freedom, and the aurora borealis in the night skies that were nature's artwork, a ceiling of stars on dark nights are flooded with rippling emerald green curtains. As I burrowed down for the night, fire crackling in the stillness, the howling of wolves drifted to us. It was a moment of complete and utter contentment. So you guys can already probably see a lot of possible phrases here. And there are many. There are many more than three, by the way, right? That's a good thing. But you have to pick out the ones that you can write the most excellent, explicit, implicit meanings for, as well as explain the use of imagery for, right? So the ones I picked out was shoveled and hacked, right? Um, Another one I picked out was nature's artwork, again, visual image. Um, and then the third one I picked out was flooded with rippling emerald green curtains. And here they're talking about the aurora borealis, that is known. Again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's a probable pronunciation, I think. So that being said, and I did check it from the mark scheme as well. So you can see that there are many, many possible phrases that we could have picked out, right? Using only nature's materials, we shovel and hack. This was the one that I picked. A reflective wall of logs. This one could also have been chosen. Passion about life out here, the joy of relative freedom also could have been picked out. Nature's artwork, a ceiling of stars on dark nights, flooded with rippling emerald green curtains, burrowed down, fire crackling in the stillness, the howling of wolves drifted to us, moment of complete and utter contentment, right? Now, in some of these, you guys can probably see that, there isn't really a visual image in some of these, but they prefer that you pick up phrases that have visual image. For the most part, so you have six phrases that you're picking up, right? At least four of them should actually have a visual image. Now, passion about life out here doesn't really have, or the joy of relative freedom doesn't really have a visual image. It's more of an abstract concept, right? Joy isn't really an image, right? Neither is passion. Same goes for a moment of complete and utter contentment. It is a moment, yes, but we can't really picture it in that sense, right? So some of these won't have that sort of an image, like a clear image designated to them, the same way a ceiling of stars on dark night that has a very clear image associated with it, right? But for the most part, try to pick up phrases that have visual images. That's what I did. Okay, now moving on to the actual answer and how we write it. We picked out phrases, we made sure that the phrases meet all of the three conditions. They have explicit meanings that we know of as well, implicit meanings that we can write about, that we can extract, and the use of imagery as well. So I will just write this here as well. Obvious, textual, straightforward meaning, right? And then implicit meaning is implication or hidden meaning or subjective meaning or effect created on the reader, the writer, or the atmosphere, or on a character, right? Use of imagery, that is a pretty obvious one, like a visual image, right? By the way, imagery can be of various types as well. For example, tactile imagery, which is imagery that is associated with some sort of texture, which you can touch. So that would be tactile. Or an auditory image that is associated with some sort of sound. So it's not always a visual image, just to be clear. But at you guys' level, we don't expect you guys to know the other types. You just stick with visual images because that's usually what they present. Okay, so now when it comes to writing it, right? So let's talk about the structure a little bit. A really straightforward way to, distribute the word count. So like I said, you guys, according to the paper, have 200 to 300 words, but it would be best to use 250 to 300 words, right? So you can distribute it like 150 words for paragraph 8 to explain paragraph 8. That would be your paragraph 1. And then 150 words for paragraph 11. Right. That's a pretty neat way of distributing it. They should almost be equal in length, right? It shouldn't be that one has 80 words and the other one has 200 words, right? Visually, they need to look balanced out. And you just need to make 2 paragraphs. So there's that. Then before you start going into the phrases and discussing the phrases for each paragraph, you have to give a brief 1 or 2 line summary of the paragraph. Make sure that summary is in line with the words you picked up. Right now, what I mean by that is try to associate that 1 line summary with the words that you have picked out or from that paragraph, right? So the set of words that I picked out from paragraph 8 were porcelain smooth, oversized cubes. What are they explaining? The path, the icy path. And then the third one I picked out was crystal bubbles of all shapes and sizes suspended in time. So I'm still talking about the icy path, right? Now the passage, one of the main themes of this particular paragraph, not passage, of this paragraph was the icy path. But there were other things going on as well. But when you're writing that brief 1 line summary of the entire paragraph, it should be related to the icy path, given that all 3 phrases are about the icy path, right? So make sure that your 1 line summary for each paragraph should be in line with the phrases that you have picked out for that paragraph. And the same thing you're going to do for paragraph 11 as well. So copy this for here too, right? Once you're done with that, then you start with the phrases. So 3 phrases, each one you are doing the implicit meaning, and focus on the image wherever possible. Right. So focus on what kind of why the writer decided to create that image or write about that image, right? So you can have that. You can include that in the implicit meaning, right? So the same thing you're going to be doing for your paragraph 11 as well. Now, other notes would be to use transitional devices and conjunctions and conjunctions wherever possible. Don't force it, but as long as there's a natural, nice flow created in your writing, you should be using them. So use transitional devices and conjunctions where possible. Use a variety of punctuation. If you know of any literary devices and can identify them, the phrase is picked out, go ahead and write about. Right? So personification, when you are giving a non-living thing the qualities of a living thing, then you can mention that oh, personification is being used. And then again, if you see a simile being used in the phrase, if you see a metaphor being used in the phrase, you can mention that as well. Use a mix of short and long. Right, so that being said, these are just overall notes, what the structure is supposed to be like. Let's take a look at the sample answer now. So the answer came to, I believe, 274 words. That's a good word count. So let's start. Paragraph 8 from the passage highlights the 4 warnings about the icy path the guide, Mike, gave to the tourists before they embarked on their dog sled adventure, right? So this is a one-line summary of paragraph 8 in line with the phrases that we picked out, because again, I've highlighted um, the fact that he is warning them about the icy path, right? The phrases are all about the icy path. They were mentally prepared for any scenario who was a tourist were, be it a porcelain smooth path or oversized cubes. These cold extremities of the path, so, right, so it can either be a porcelain smooth path or oversized cubes, so these two extremes. The best case scenario, the worst case scenario, signify both the beauty and the potential horrors of their expedition. Here, the spot on imagery also portrays the thoroughness of Mike's instructions and is a testament to years of experience, right? So, this was implicit meaning, right? And this was explicit meaning. Explicit, implicit. What is the imagery doing? It's actually showcasing how thorough Mike is with, giving instructions. And also that he has years of experience, because the image that he has created, like oversized ice cubes, porcelain smooth, it, even though I am not there, but I can visualize that icy path, that it can either be porcelain smooth or oversized cubes. Lynn later recalls her view of the path. So Lynn is again the tourist who is actually writing this journal entry. The text that we read was a journal entry. Crystal bubbles of all shapes and sizes suspended in time, the third phrase. So this is her view of the path. Explicit meaning. This is her view of the path. The visual of crystal bubbles is both a picturesque and curious one, and allows the reader to vicariously experience Alaskan adventure through her. So again, this is implicit meaning and imagery both combined together, right? So the visual of crystal bubbles is it's a very picturesque image, and it's a curious one, and it allows the reader to vicariously experience Alaskan adventure through her. So living vicariously means to again live through somebody. It's the same way when you watch those 75 questions of Vogue that a celebrity is doing, and you get a feel of their life. So you kind of vicariously live their life by watching that video in a way. You get a feel of their life. So again, when she talks about the crystal bubbles and she creates an image of the crystal bubbles, we as the reader, when we're not there, we vicariously live through her. Okay, now coming to paragraph 11. On the other hand, so now we're moving to other paragraphs. So on the other hand, transition device. Transitional device is a device that shows some sort of transition. So this is a transitional device that shows contrast, right? On the other hand, on the flip side, etc. And then there are other transitional devices, such as listing transitional devices, which show some sort of a transition of idea, right? So from one thing to another. So for example, listing transitional devices are like firstly, secondly, thirdly, next, or additionally, moreover, furthermore, etc. On the other hand, paragraph 11 presents a visual snapshot of the most memorable night of Lynn's trip, with the aurora borealis or northern lights being quite literally the highlight of the night. So a little pun, right? They're a highlight because they're light of the night. So here it's this is again a short summary of the passage, of the paragraph, not the passage, and it's in line with the phrases I have picked out. So two of the phrases I picked out for this paragraph are actually about the aurora borealis. They're about the northern lights, right? She recalls having to shovel and hack, right? So literally like hands in the dirt, shoveling and hacking to create a camp for the overnight stay. The phrase pertinently portrays, again, this is explicit meaning, to create a camp for the overnight stay. The phrase pertinently portrays the hands-on, natural experience of the getaway, that compels the campers to get their hands in the dirt, right? implicit meaning, right? This natural experience. Additionally, the aurora borealis being called nature's artwork reinforces the holistic natural experience of the trip. So again, the motif of nature is present here again. It was present even in the shovel and hack part. At the same time, the personification of nature makes the reader see nature as an idiosyncratic character, an immersive experience of its own, right? So it's nature's artwork. Um, so again, you guys don't have to use literary devices, but if you know of them, you can, right? Extra brownie point. Personification. But even an answer that has, implicit meanings done well, and explicit meanings done well, you're still going to get good marks. You're still going to get a decent mark for this. You don't have to use these devices. You're not expected to. It's a language paper, not a literature paper. But if you know of them, good for you. Makes a reader see nature as an idiosyncratic character, an immersive experience of its own. Again, implicit meaning, implicit development. Lastly, Lynn describes the shades of green of the aurora borealis as flooded with rippling emerald green curtains. The vivid visual image serves to deliver to the reader a sense of wonder at the magnificent nighttime spectacle, nothing less than witnessing a miracle. So again, this part is explicit meaning. Then what is she describing? The shades of green of the aurora borealis, of the northern lights, right? Flooded with rippling emerald green curtains. And then the implicit meaning is, what kind of effect is it creating? The vivid visual image serves to do what? To deliver to the reader a sense of wonder at the magnificent nighttime spectacle, nothing less than witnessing a miracle, right? So use another transitional device here. Lastly, it signifies obviously the last idea and that we're ending here. And that is pretty much it. That is your answer. A couple other things. So you guys can see I use singular quotation marks wherever I use the phrases. That's a good way to highlight them. Otherwise, you can also underline them. I have used for transitional devices. I have also tried to use a mix of short and long sentences. So this is a short sentence. She recalls having to shovel and hack to create a camp for the overnight stay. Not super short, but shorter compared to the others. I do recall using a semicolon somewhere as well. I'm pretty sure I use a semicolon in the first paragraph somewhere. Right, here it is. They were mentally prepared for any scenario. Be it this or that. So you can use semicolons as well. You can use colons. You can use commas. You can use exclamation marks if it's fitting. But don't force anything. That is the main, takeaway from this. So don't force anything. Wherever you're writing is, we just want to see a natural flow of your work, right? And that can be done in a variety of ways. So whatever allows your writing to flow naturally and gives it a very natural flow. I don't know why I keep saying that. That is what you should be aiming for, right? And so this is for 15 marks. I will also, now that we're done with the sample answer, I will also link, I will also show you guys the mark scheme. So what do you get marks for in a question like this? Okay. Notes on the task. This question is marked for the ability to select powerful or unusual words and for an understanding of ways in which the language is effective. Expect responses to provide words or phrases that carry connotations additional to a general meaning, right? So don't pick words that have just a basic meaning. Pick words that elicit a deeper, implicit meaning as well, right? That you can draw out as a reader. Now, instead of saying green shades of the northern lights, the person actually said emerald green curtains. Why did they do that, right? That is what you have to write here. Mark holistically for the overall quality of the response, not for the number of words chosen, bearing in mind that for the higher bands, there should be a range of choices to demonstrate an understanding of how language works, and that this should include the ability to explain images. It is the quality of the analysis that attracts marks. Do not deduct marks for inaccurate statements, simply ignore them. So, lucky for you guys, there's no negative marking. The following notes are a guide to what good responses might say about the selection. Candidates can make any sensible comment, but only credit those that are relevant to the correct meaning of the word context and that have some validity. Alternative acceptable explanations should be credited. Credit comments on effects created by non-vocabulary choices such as grammar, syntax, and punctuation devices. So sometimes the phrases that you pick out will also have some kind of syntax or punctuation in them as well. So you can comment on that as well for extra marks. These must be additional to comments on vocabulary, right? So notice how I said extra marks. You do have to first talk about the three conditions that we talked about: explicit, implicit, imagery. Then you can talk about things like structure, or punctuation, or syntax, etc. And that is pretty much it for this question. Okay, just one more thing actually. So to get 13 to 15 marks for this, which is what you guys should be aiming for, you have to use a wide-ranging discussion of, you have to have a wide-ranging discussion of judiciously selected language with some high-quality comments that add meaning and associations to words or phrases in both parts of the text and demonstrate the writer's reasons for using them. So again, instead of using the basic vocabulary or basic, phrases, why did the writer, go to great lengths and add these, very, very specific images, etc. Tackles imagery with some precision and imagination. There is clear evidence that the candidate understands how language works. So for 13 to 15 marks, which is what you guys are aiming for, you should be going for meeting all three of these requirements. That's pretty much it.